This episode of the WP Minute is brought to you by OmniSend. Do you sell stuff online? Then you need to meet OmniSend, the powerful yet refreshingly intuitive email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 for every dollar spent. OmniSend is that good and effective. You probably know the struggles of investing in digital ads with no guarantee it'll bring money back into your pocket. Use OmniSend and you won't have to find creative ways to make your audience notice you. You just talk straight to them. Use OmniSend pop-ups to build a contact list, then send campaigns directly to people who already want to hear from you. Automate everything with OmniSend. Just set it up once, sit back, and watch those sales roll in. If this sounds too good to be true, check it out at omnisend.com. Visit omnisend.com. Tell them thanks for sponsoring the WP Minute. Victor Ramirez, welcome to the WP Minute.
Good to be here.
You're the first of a laboratory session. No, not a laboratory, a psychologist session of breaking down, what are the challenges folks are facing headed into 2025. Obviously, we've got the big 3,000-pound gorilla in the room with WordPress drama. We've got AI seeping into all angles of development and marketing. People looking at this is going to replace us. Then we have the natural temperature of a competitive landscape with so many more people coming online, building services, businesses becoming freelancers. There's alternative content management systems. We want to talk about some of that stuff today. But last time, let's just introduce who you are and what you do. Last time you and I chatted was on a Twitter space. I looked at you as this guy who freelances in the enterprise space. Did I get that correct? Or what do you do these days?
I fell into freelance. So I've always had a day job, and I sometimes forget to talk. I don't talk about my day jobs that much because, unfortunately, the enterprise companies that I've worked for, they don't. Now, not saying they don't value open source. They do take advantage of open source. They sometimes contribute to open source. They, issues, bugs, etc. But it takes so much effort to get them to even sign a piece of paper to let me speak at a conference that it's just better that I do my own thing. I was previously at News Corp, Wall Street Journal, and I helped build the enterprise WordPress systems there with like 5 VIP agencies. After that, I was at the Not Worldwide, which is, if anyone got married, weddingwire.com, Casamientos, Hitched, Mariajes. It's like a global organization. And then now I'm at Sotheby's, which is Sotheby's Art, if anyone has auctioned a pair of Michael Jordan sneakers. But throughout that, I do freelance because from the journal, that got me WordPress work. People would hear about the work I was doing, and then I would be on Upwork or I'd be, on LinkedIn, and people would say, hey, I need help with WordPress. And then from WordPress, that's actually how I got the job at the Knot. At the journal, I had to learn a lot about APIs and data architecture. And at the Knot Worldwide, we went from 160 websites to one unified architecture. And it was in analytics. And then at Sotheby's, that's what I do right now, where I work in enterprise analytics, and it's our analytics systems across. Sotheby's.com is 8 different applications in a website suite. That's what I like to joke. It's Python, it's Ruby, it's a mobile application, but we have to have a unified analytics architecture, and that's what I manage. And so, throughout the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, I was like, everyone was laying everyone off in 2021. And then those people were coming to me and saying, hey, a marketing team that used WordPress was like, we lost 5 engineers. Can you pick up and keep the site maintained for this event coming up? And that did really well in 2021. And then it kind of dried out. And now I'm doing mostly data analytics stuff related to what I'm doing right now.
Now, across the board, that's a healthy set of logos on your resume. Across the board, is that all WordPress? Like what you're doing with Sotheby's now, is it all WordPress, or are you doing other
nothing technologies? Is WordPress. Nothing outside of freelance is WordPress anymore. But WordPress is still my go-to tool, and that's what. Okay, so if I'm going to do a demo for the team, what drives me crazy is, and not to insult them, I'll get a React engineer who can, code all these cool front-end libraries, do all this great stuff. But when I try to explain to him how to install an NPM package that lets him use Google Tag Manager, they get so frustrated and they won't give me a staging environment because, I'm not the application engineer. I'm the analytics engineer. So I don't get a staging environment that's unique to me because of resourcing issues. I don't get my own GitHub repo. I don't get my own branch. I don't get my own keys. So I will spin up a WordPress environment and I'll make a mock website of our own products using WooCommerce. And I will install Google Tag Manager from WooCommerce. I'll install a CMP. I'll install all the things the same that we would do in our enterprise organization and I demo with WordPress. And so WordPress is kind of like my laboratory. And then the same thing at the Not Worldwide, we were using WordPress in some of our e-commerce applications, but as we moved towards a monolithic architecture, it was migrating from WordPress into the monolithic architecture. And that was driven by a BigCommerce API. But knowing WordPress in the end, I tell people, I kind of see, I heard someone say when learning to code, it's like learning how to cook. Like whether a person knows how to fry an egg in a wok or fry an egg in a cast iron skillet or do it on a flat grill, you know how to cook an egg, you know how to make the yolk the right way, whatever. So I see WordPress as like, hey, it's a griddle, and it's like, and then sometimes I have to cook at a wok, sometimes I cook on a flat top, but WordPress really is my tried and true system, and I can teach a marketing person to use it, I can teach an engineer to use it for all its warts and whatever,
Yeah, what do you think the biggest challenge is? And you can take it in two paths. Either you personally, as a freelancer who's maybe on the side trying to find more WordPress work or get WordPress out there, or at your full-time gig. Where are the biggest challenges you see headed into 2025?
For WordPress, I think the biggest problem for WordPress is going to be, and this was at News Corp, as much as I can say, the first thing I was hired for, I was not hired as a great engineer at News Corp. I was running the WPNYC meetup. We had working with Steve Bruner, Winstina Hughes, and other people there. We had the meetup at Times Square. It was a great thing. That's what got me the job. Essentially, they were like, you're the only person based in New York who's willing to take a job. We need a WordPress subject matter expert. And I actually ran into someone the other day who worked for the Washington Post and had the same job. And I had to compare Arc, which was owned by Amazon and used by the Washington Post, Chorus, which is now gone, by the way. Good thing we didn't bet on that, owned by Vox. WordPress won out at News Corp. And the reason WordPress won out is what I said was, we've got a great community. And I didn't even say we. I was, look, if I have to drop WordPress and that's what keeps me my job, I understand, because that's business. And News Corp had to say, and I said, look, in the end, News Corp, WordPress is not owned by one individual organization. If any organization were to fall down, like if Automatic were to leave, and funny to say that now, if Automatic were to quit, everyone else still has access to the repos. Everyone still has access to the org. We could fork and move on. If we don't like it, we just freeze our version, because we use GitHub for version control. We freeze our version. We decide what plugins we want to maintain. We decide what plugins to replace with a third-party API, et cetera, and we move on. But I think the issue now, if I were in that same job, and I am having that now, where I'm working with certain marketing teams, and they're saying to me, and this is outside of Sotheby's, like I work with some enterprise, I'm one of the 1% of enterprise certified WordPress developers on Upwork. So if you go on Upwork and you see my badge, I had an interview. I worked for Databricks. I actually built Databricks' WordPress website, which is now a headless website. And it's funny because Databricks was not big 3 years ago. Now they're huge in the AI space. And they're coming, not Databricks, but other companies are coming to me and saying, should we even bother investing in this WordPress website anymore? Should we just focus on moving to Webflow? And luckily where I sit, I'm like, listen, that's not really a conversation with me. We're going to use Google Tag Manager. So whether you use Webflow, a custom React application, or WordPress, there's a module that lets us inject Google Tag Manager with Google Analytics, Fathom, whatever you're using. So we're abstracting away our analytics. And that's kind of what I sell. Like I'm very good at abstracting things out. But now I think more and more people are going to have to say, how do I abstract this particular need? If it's a video website, and you would never do video in the WordPress Media Manager, but now it's like, hey, if I use something like Cloudinary, it's actually injecting the Cloudinary Media Manager into WordPress, so that if we ever move away from WordPress, there's no lag in the user interface. It's just going to be Cloudinary, but in different in craft. Cloudinary and Statamic. I don't know if I'm even saying that right. Statamic. And I think that's how people are going to have to think, and you can sell more. But it's not helping because people are saying, do I want to spend any more money on WordPress? And I'm like, and that's with clients all the time. They always want to change horses. And I'm like, listen, don't change horses while riding. Let's just continue on the GTM work. But you're not wrong to think that way. Keep an eye on it, and I'm going to build it in such a way that you don't have to worry about it. We're going to make it so it's abstracted, but you should worry about it.
I want to just take the conversation, just not really a fork in the road, but just a touch. You mentioned Upwork. I think of a guy like you, and no offense, I think of a guy like you that has all this enterprise experience. Like Upwork, this people should just be knocking on this. He should have a waiting list of people in his inbox. Is Upwork a true alternative for folks to find freelance work, I've always looked at those sites as there can't be a guy like Victor on Upwork. I just think of it as like smaller little gig type projects, but Upwork is good for you. Can you help break that down for the listener who's thinking, I want to find work like Victor. Maybe I should try Upwork.
Upwork is great if you can't let Upwork be your only thing. It's the same thing. Like, listen, the reason I joined the WordPress meetup was one, I was trying to learn, but it was about access, right? And so if you go and you Google hire, and again, this is a marketing question, right? So it's like saying to yourself, like, if I were to run ads as a WordPress developer in New York City, I think it's $50 per click for an ad, a Google ad for WordPress developer, right? So let's say globally it's $20. You're competing against big agencies that have big dollars, sales teams. Can you answer the phone the minute someone clicks a thing? Can you make a call? Can you take an enterprise call? So I saw it as a channel. And what happened was I got lucky at the time in 2020. Upwork was looking to professionalize their services. So I was on there and I put that I had worked with the Wall Street Journal. I put that I had worked with certain organizations. And then when Databricks was looking for someone, Upwork was like, hey, you have enterprise experience. We're going to put you in front of Databricks. So that's what got me the work. But I would say for most people, if you can be on Upwork, this is another way to think about it. And I don't know, because SEO is customized by localization. AI is changing SEO now. But if someone goes and types in WordPress developer, St. Paul, Minnesota, right? Your Upwork profile is going to rank higher than a LinkedIn profile. It's going to rank higher than your own website because Upwork does its own SEO and it's prioritized. So I would argue it's good. But the thing is to not undercut yourself. And I wrote an article, if you check my website and you is victorious Upwork, I wrote and talked about it. Don't think of yourself competing against people, charging $5 an hour, or I think the limit's like $10 an hour over in India or Vietnam. Think of yourself as like they want to hire someone who has the cultural nuance. And I would argue for like legal reasons, like you have to hire within certain regions. And the other thing too on Upwork is you're competing from, do you understand the US market? And that was with Databricks. Databricks was running a US based event. And what was happening was, some of these companies, they go and hire a developer from abroad, and that developer doesn't have the eye to see like, hey, you're doing this RTL. This is a very confusing interface. This interface is actually for that side of the hemisphere. You want your sidebar on the left. And it's little things like that add up to a client. And so that's what I did well on Upwork. I'm getting back on there now because I kind of took a break from it because what happened was, and this was another flux in the WordPress soup, so to speak, Gutenberg and the editor, because so many block editor tools were coming out with all these crazy block interface changes that I didn't know how to put my foot down with clients and say, we're not doing that. Now I can because of two things, accessibility and analytics. So now if a client wants all these whooshings all across the screen, I'm like, we can do that. You're going to lose hotspot tracking. You're going to be not GDPR compliant. You're not going to be accessible compliant. So we can do that visually, but you lose all this other stuff. And that's kind of where, again, you get the clients. It's really about, you're going to kiss 100 frogs. You might get one good client on Upwork, but it's just part of your regular marketing and sales cycle.
Is Gutenberg as big a thorn in the side of WordPress, at least from your perspective, maybe in the enterprise market, as a lot of people make it out to be?
So for anyone, I'm going to just caveat in the beginning, for anyone who's worked in enterprise, they know that marketing is 100% detached from engineering. When I'm at News Corp or one of these big publishers, I have God mode. I can run all these packages that turn off the extra H1s so no one puts in two H1s. I can turn off these blocks. I can block people from installing plugins, block people from doing this. So that is a completely different team when you're working in the engineering team building the application that is used for content entry or e-commerce, etc. When you're working with a small business or marketing, it is a huge thorn in the side because a lot of the times, most of the clients you're getting are not actually engineering or professional clients. They are clients who were sold blocks or whatever they were sold, which I like some of these. Cadence, they're pretty slick. I use Cadence. I use Twentig for my own websites, which I haven't updated in a long time, but I'm working on. I have 3 weeks off this coming Benefit Enterprise. I have 3 weeks off this coming month to work and update my own websites, and I'll use them. But I would hate for a client to have them because the client then, it's not the client going to you, hey, we want to implement this feature. It's the client saying, I broke my site by putting 3 different builders on it. Can you make it look like this? And that's the crux of Gutenberg. Gutenberg is kind of sold as this Swiss Army knife. And there's some great people out there in the Gutenberg space. I'm not going to name specific ones, but they're like, the web should be free. Let me design the way I want to design. Let it be free. I hate when people say that. Nothing should be free. You don't go to cars in a highway and say, let me be free on the road. Let me veer into traffic the way I want. No, this is a utilitarian system that should be composed in a particular way. So if you're someone who needs to run a business, I think Gutenberg is terrible because it's too much. It's like, just think about it as a highway. And that's like a lot of the Gutenberg people. And Richard Tabor, he is, and I love Rich's stuff because he writes great stuff. He worked, I don't know if he's still with Automatic. He has some of the best stuff out there, but he's one of those, let's call it like very free person about Gutenberg. Like, let people do what they want. No, we don't let them do it with cars. We don't let them do it with, in the United States with guns. And maybe we do, I don't know, but you got to control things. And so that's where I think Gutenberg, if you have the controls, is beautiful. But if you just let Gutenberg be free, if you do free range Gutenberg, you're running for trouble.
Some of that WordPress chaos of like, what is this thing? How do I use it? Who should be using it? Is part of the success of WordPress, right? Because anyone can grab it, start doing things. But then obviously the particular challenge is you could do anything and you run into these issues that you just mentioned. What direction should the core team take it? Should they make it for the end user or should they make it for the web professional?
I mean, in the end, how are you benefiting an end user by allowing 2 H1s by default? In the end, how are you benefiting a user by letting them put the header below, like, and when I say the header, I mean like the HTML element of header on the footer? Why are we letting them do that? How are we benefiting them? And I think that's the thing. You get the free range WordPress people who are like, well, maybe I want to, because in the end, you get, and engineers have had this conversation. You have a lot of engineers in PHP space who say it as well. They're like, best practices and design patterns were just thought up by some guy. Yes, you're right, but they've been adopted by the world, and the internet is no longer a free range place. It is controlled by the walled gardens of SEO and Facebook and Google and Bing and all these other things. So in reality, we're no longer making free range websites. We're making a website that has to fit into an ecosystem. So I think we should make core build the best tools for end users to fit into the ecosystem. And if you're letting people have multiple H1s and you're letting people put the header and the footer in the header, you're not doing them any favors.
Is SEO dead?
SEO is never dead. And SEO, I even hate the word because it's semantic internet. In the end, like, listen, I build like a lot of internal tools at our organizations, and those internal tools might be something like, we have at Sotheby's, we have auctions, right? And so those auctions, they have to be managed, they have to be searched for, they have to be cataloged. We're doing SEO, right? Because we're like, how do I look up an auction? How do I look up a product? How do I look up an item? How do I look up whatever? That's SEO. So as long as but I think the SEO of 10 ways to use WordPress and one you never thought of, I hope that dies, because that is the frustrating thing when I'm someone like, I just want to Google Gutenberg disable 2 H1s. I'm going to stick with that one to keep it simple. Disable 2 H1s. It's like 10 things you must clean up in your Gutenberg editor. 10 things. It's like, and that drives me nuts. Whereas now I can go to ChatGPT or, in any of these systems, or, I can use download. I actually use Dash, which is a local downloads the WordPress codex. I use Dash with my own LLM, and I connect Anthropic to Dash, and I type in a command, and I type in remove H1, and it generates it automatically. And now I don't use Google anymore for that reason. I have my own local internet, and so that is hugely beneficial. But SEO is not dead, because, and again, I think it's that also selling it in that way. Like, I sell like a lot of user portals where like we'll have a client and they'll have like an internal user portal, and I'm like, hey. They're like, oh, why can't my subscribers find the course they're looking for? Because you didn't add the proper metadata to all of your videos, and that metadata, you need to use search WP or relevancy, and we're going to make it now, and we're going to reduce the churn of the subscribers to your user site. And that's, and that's something that is still SEO, but it's not the SEO that marketers are doing to rank websites. It still is semantic use cases for AI, LLMs, or, bots.
I bring that up, one, because you brought it up, but second, I think a lot of folks, and I think you were kind of hinting at this, I think another reason for the adoption of WordPress over any proprietary hosting CMS, Wix, Squarespace, Webflow. I think a lot of it is particularly like we can own this experience, not because of the freedom of it, but because we have particular SEO strategies in place, and WordPress allows us to do these things. At least that's the way that I've always perceived it. So I've seen a lot of people select WordPress because they can control the slug, the server side of things. They have Yoast SEO and all these other various plugins. And for, a little bit of core WordPress has that essence of SEO in it. And I'm really curious on how the SEO market shifts to how that impacts the adoption of WordPress, at least for a certain silo of user, 2025 and the future. Yeah, so that's always something that I'm always thinking of, is like what that world of SEO impact has on WordPress as a publishing platform. No direct question, but I don't know if you have a comment.
No, I still think that's going to be important. So my partner is a artist, a very accomplished artist. And, some of her work, she's gotten 3D scanned. She's gotten it scanned. Like, she does these giant 8x10 paintings. And once they're auctioned off and once they're sold to the larger market, she'll never see it again. But I'm helping her. And it's funny because she was like, couldn't I use, I don't know, what was it called? She brought up an old on Mac that, there used to be these database systems that you could have in your computer, or like, what's the thing? Key, it was something in Microsoft. There used to be these or OneNote, or like these things where you store a database, right? But what I said to her was
database for Microsoft.
Access, that's it, Access, right? And I was
I used to make a lot of money as a young freelancer selling Access database.
But what I said to her was, I was like, the benefit of using WordPress for your website, because even she's very internet, she's an internet person. And she literally was like, hey, do we want to use WordPress? And I said, listen, the benefit of WordPress is this. Even if WordPress were to get in her version, because we're creating a custom post type of artwork, and that artwork, we were able to add all this metadata, the date, the characters in the art, the type of painting, the type of medium, the colors, all these things. And of course, we use a little AI to go and read the colors from the painting to autofill the metadata. That was pretty neat. And that benefited her, because if all of a sudden she were to move away from WordPress, she could put it into a digital asset management system like Cloudinary. But now also what I told her was, you adding all this rich metadata means that now if anyone searches for your artwork or your images, they're going to be able to find it easier. And because I did go and look at other things, and I was like, well, I would have to do two things at once, because again, I'm building a digital asset management system using WordPress for her art, and I'm also building her a website so her art can be found. Well, and she doesn't need to be found. Her art is at the level where it's sold by auctioneers, etc. But just, for her friends to go and find art, or for like her to network with other artists. But I was saying to her, like, I would have to maintain two systems. I would have to go and build a system that stores this data, and then I have to build three systems, a connector to your CMS, whether it be Webflow, whatever. And Webflow isn't easy to do it. Squarespace is not easy to do it. Nothing else is easy. So in the end, WordPress has the ubiquity, and that's one of the things WordPress still does have, the ubiquity of throw a rock in Brooklyn. You're going to find a librarian, a editor, or a kid who is in a rock band who's used it before, right? And so I think the ubiquity of the interface of WordPress still is great, because it's a lot of learning curve to learn to use a lot of other systems. And that's why I think WordPress still shines. And from an SEO perspective, think of it that way. These SEO tools, if I were working in the SEO space and I was working with a publisher, I would say, look, all the work that you do, updating this content, getting really rich metadata, using something like a Yoast SEO or Rank Math, that metadata is going to then make your API richer when you're doing your own custom LLM and serving that as a RAG, which is retrieval access generative system. Because in the end, RAGs, they're not as smart as everyone thinks. They need to be trained. They need the data. The better that the data is, the metadata is, the better that data can be chunked and then served into the LLM system. And that's where, again, that's SEO. And SEO teams need to get better at spinning that and communicating that.
All right, we've been throwing around some acronyms, RAG, LLM. We're just dancing around AI.
Sorry.
Yeah. I want to dive into that as one of our final topics here. I'm building things, Victor, with AI. I don't know a lick of Java. Well, I do now because I've been like seeping myself in it. But prior to, never been able to build a React app standalone with my own feature set. Never. Could even dream of that. Now I'm doing it in minutes. What is the impact you see on AI augmenting or, taking away from the freelancer out there trying to build WordPress websites?
I think anyone who did anything that was repetitive action is cooked. So but listen, they were getting cooked before LLMs, because if you were the person who all you did was compose, I will compose 5 semantic HTML5 templates for you. Well, VS Code came around. You do hashtag bang. I think it's like you just do the bang symbol and tab, and it does a full semantic HTML5 doc type. If you installed a Bootstrap library, you could type in xs.3, and it would give you 3 extra small columns, and then you just fill it in, right? The LLM is only accelerating that, right? So I think those people are cooked. People who generated, hey, I have clients who do video. Now all they do is make a YouTube video, and think about the YouTube pipeline. They make a YouTube video. The transcription is AI. The description is AI. The thumbnail is AI. They now turn that into a blog post. That's AI. That blog post has 10 pull quotes that they can turn into 10 tweets. That's AI. They need to make 10 TikTok videos off of the video. That's AI. They need to add captions. That's AI. In the end, it's one person overseeing the AI pipeline. But all those jobs have been deleted because there's no video editor going finding clips. There's no video editor going and adding all the translation. There's no person listening and writing the transcription. I mean, you get better quality, but the difference between 95% accuracy versus 99% accuracy is not as great as just having someone go and QA it for an hour. You have to kind of sit down and think about the cost. Those jobs are cooked. Whereas I think, and in Upwork, the higher end jobs, they're willing to pay more money because it's where they're saying like, hey, we cooked up this application with a developer and got to the MVP with AI. Now we want to deploy it. We keep getting rejected from the App Store. We keep getting rejected on this. Oh, by the way, our developer put the API keys in the GitHub repo because the AI didn't tell them not to. And so we got hacked. And I think that on the higher end, that's where the money's going to be because it's going to be you as a developer. And I think it was like this guy, he's great. Santiago something, he's on Twitter. He's a Cuban guy. And he said, your job is not getting, and I disagree with him. Your job is taken by AI if you're a video editor. Everyone I know in video editing, they're doing terribly. And again, because all these AI tools are coming out. But he's talking to developers and he says, your job is not going to be taken by AI. Your job is going to be taken by the person who knows how to use AI. And that really is for someone like myself. Like, you're right. I used to have to go and go, okay, I hadn't done a React application in a while. I'm like, let me go. Okay, I have to go create React app, go to the documentation. Now, Anthropic. I need to create a basic React application that tells me this. It's going to go into this API, generate this, and then this. But then as a developer, I had to know. It came back and I was like, you made that call, but you didn't ask for my API key. Where are you getting this data? It's like, oh, we used mock data. And I'm like, okay, so use the API key. Use the API key, but then the API key failed. And I said, I'm running it on a local host without SSH. It's not going to work. You need to use a fallback for the mock data so that when it falls back, it uses the mock data and it should display a warning at the top to say mock data being used so that I know that when I'm running the application, it's not, and you have to know that stuff. If you're, as a developer, if you've been working long enough, you know those things. Like, you're the one who has to think like that. So that's the high level developers are going to do really well with AI, in my opinion. But the low level ones, again, if you were doing anything that it was you just repeating yourself over and over again, that job is going to be gone soon.
I've been building these little ad hoc React apps, and the biggest thing that I've noticed the difference is, and I've tried a bunch of platforms as I force myself to learn this stuff. Kind of makes me feel like when I was learning like Thesis and page lines and site origin from way back in page building days in WordPress, when you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just building these pages. I don't know what's happening on the front end. I'm just dragging and dropping in WordPress, I don't know, 15, 18 years ago, whenever that was. So I'm building these little apps, and what I have found is a newfound respect for this monolithic app, if I can call it that, a monolithic WordPress app. Because while I can build these little ad hoc things, every single one is different. The way that this AI is generating it, it's recommending database structure to me differently. It's recommending frameworks differently. It's recommending icons differently, right? Like on what icons it's going to use to make these apps. What that has done to me is like, wow, I can build these things really quick, but there is a inconsistency across the board and a real heavy sustainability factor. Like you were just saying, you might lose these little tasks to AI, but there still needs to be this human oversight to make sure it's working correctly. Because, okay, great, I can build these little apps, but they're all different, and they're all going to be maintained differently. Whereas that newfound respect to the monolithic app of WordPress, to me, is like, oh, I could I could just use WordPress for my user management, for my database structure, for my posts and my pages, and I'll just use AI to augment that. Don't try to use AI to replace it because there's thousands of people overseeing WordPress, but use it and then or build it with WordPress and then accelerate it potentially with AI. That's the thinking I have for the next few years, the couple of years, 2 to 3 years with AI and WordPress, because yeah, I mean, I can just see that as extending WordPress instead of replacing WordPress. That's my sort of perception of this stuff.
I don't think AI can replace WordPress because the thing I originally said, or we were talking about, which was, hey, we are going to be doing, are we using blocks or are we using, and I know Blocksy, are we using Blocksy? Are we using Cadence? Are we using one of those?
Genesis,
and a lot of the times clients don't even know if they're using Cadence. Like they bought the website originally from someone, then they're like, get this AI WordPress builder, and then the WordPress builder goes installs another page builder, and then all of a sudden when they go install, and this is how I find it, this is why I like accessibility and analytics. Every single time it all of a sudden gets to the AI and the analytics and accessibility part, they go and install an accessibility plugin or an analytics plugin, and they're like, why isn't it seeing that? Oh, because the analytics plugin can't tell whether you're using Blocksy or this, and you have 3 page builders installed, and one made the header and one made this. And so when you tick the box in the analytics tool that says, I use Blocksy, it's going to only write all the analytics for Blocksy, but then all of a sudden you're using Cadence for this and this for that. And that's what AI does. Like you were saying before, like I had AI bringing in like 3 or 4 different libraries. And I was like, hey, please use this library instead because I'm building it for this application stack and I need to use this library. And then it tried to argue with me and it's like, well, this library is better. And I'm like, get at it, junior developer. Like we're using this library, you know? And so, yeah, the AI, it backtalks sometimes and you got to correct it. So, yeah.
Victor Ramirez, propping up WordPress in the enterprise and fighting the good battle of AI. Thanks for hanging out today. Where can folks find you on the web to say thanks?
You can just, Victor Ramirez WordPress brings me up all that. I have done my own SEO. Let me actually double check that and see if that still works. But if you type Victor Ramirez WordPress, you can find me on Twitter. I'm not really active. I don't know if anyone uses Facebook anymore, but yeah, you could find me on there. Victor Ramirez WordPress, my website's there, some YouTube videos, and my Twitter account is still there. I'm sticking with Twitter. You can go and find my Twitter if you type Victor Ramirez WordPress.
Awesome stuff. That'll be in the show notes because, humans still write the show notes here. It's the WPminute.com, the WPminute.com/subscribe to stay connected. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to the WP Minute. This episode is brought to you by our amazing pillar sponsors, Pressable, OmniSend, Bluehost, and Kinsta. Without their support and the support from our WP Minute Slack members, this content wouldn't be possible. Thanks to our Foundation Plus sponsors, Hostinger, Big Scoots, Themile, Optimal, PatchStack, Weglot, Personalized WP, Deploy HQ, and WP World. Their recognition to help support independent WordPress media keeps the lights on. Want to support the WP Minute through sponsorship or joining our members-only Slack? Visit WPminute.com/support.